Example I can give you is I was fishing at the U.S. Open. I was practicing for the U.S. Open down at Lake Mead about 8 or 9 years ago. And I was fishing a jerkbait in that tournament, and I started noticing, or in the practice, and I started noticing a lot of the fish that I caught, they had fresh crawdads in their gullet, and the pinchers were sticking out. Every one of them was bright red pinchers. It's like that much of the pincher on them was like bright red fingernail polish. Not one or two of them, but every one of them. I caught like 5 or 6 bass that day, and they all were feeding on crawdads that had these red pinchers. So I'm like, God, this is a no-brainer. These fish are feeding on crawdads, even though I'm catching them on a jerkbait, and they're after these red crawdads. So I started making up some of my jigs, and I put bright red dye on the end of my crawdad trailers and tried to match the color of the crawdad that the fish had in their gullets. I couldn't get a bite on it. It's like literally I had 0 bites on that crawdad that I created almost identical to that. And I've also done this on like perch patterns, because a lot of times, you know, in the summertime of the year, fish feed on either black perch or bluegills or, you know, pumpkin seeds. And they all have different variations like yellow and orange and green on them. And I've tried to duplicate the same with like a chatterbait skirt and a spinnerbait skirt. It doesn't work. So from what I have seen in my own bass fishing, this whole thing about matching the hatch and trying to create, you know, as close as you can to the forage that the fish are feeding on is a myth. It is not, there's no bearing on it whatsoever as far as what the fish prefer. The fish will feed and prefer certain things based upon a ton of other variables besides the color of that lure. Now, in my opinion, the number one thing more important than color in trying to match the hatch is the lure profile and the lure size. So when you're thinking in terms of like trying to match the hatch with your shad or your perch or your crawdads, pay attention to the size of the crawdads or the perch or whatever that you think the fish are feeding on. If you're fishing down the bank and you notice some shad, like up on the surface, and you see these shad are 1.5 inches long, or some of them are 3 inches long, try to duplicate your shad pattern lures to the size of the shad that you're seeing in the water. If you are up on the bank in the summertime of the year, and you know, a lot of times you can see those perch swimming real shallow on the bank, pay close attention to how big those perch are. Try to match that. And the same with the crawdads. If you start noticing some crawdads in the fish's, you know, gullet sticking out, or if you can like roll over some crawdads or try to find some crawdads underneath rocks, try to get a feel for the size of the crawdads and try to match your jig size